Shalom, friends. Welcome to this Shear in Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. We're studying the Maamar HaIkarim. This is an essay which brings down the most fundamental and essential concepts in all of the Torah. I'm Eliyahu Shear. My website's www.lovingkindness.co. We're going to get started right away. We're following on from our first Shear. If you haven't watched it yet, please go back and see it. It deals with the Creator. In our Shear today, we're going to be discussing in chapter 2, Baruch Niyim, spiritual beings. In our first chapter, we dealt with the basics of God, a creator. Without a creator in the world, there is no world. This is the most basic foundation of all Torah, of all Judaism, of the entire existence of the world itself. Now we come to the second section, which deals with spiritual beings. In other words, what we're talking about here is the style of the Ramchal. He begins by introducing the subject of God, of a creator. Then he brings us down to a lower level where we speak about spiritual beings. And afterwards, he's going to take us through some of the most essential ideas of Judaism, of Torah, and of life itself, where we speak about different concepts like reward and punishment. We speak about concepts of Moshe, of Moses, of prophecy, of the world to come, redemption, etc., etc. He's going to take us through all of these particular concepts. In today's lesson, we're going to be speaking about spiritual beings. What are spiritual beings? Who are they? And what is their role in creation? Let us begin. Baruch Niyim, with regards to spiritual beings. Ha'adon yisbarach shmo, the Master, may his name be blessed. Kamo shebiyachalto habilti ba'al tachlis. Just as it is that we speak about his absolute infinite being, that's really what he is, then bara hanimtzaim hagufanim, he created beings which have physical characteristics, body characteristics, sheroim einenu, and that's what we see with our eyes. Take a look around and you'll see that there are physical entities in the world, human beings, animals, and all sorts of other creatures that we come across. This is God in his infinite ability creating physical beings. But nevertheless, so too, he wanted and he did indeed create creations of another kind. Me'ulim, and they are even more superior to the bodies that we see around us. We see people, we see, as we're going to discuss, as we are human beings, which comprise souls inside ourselves, and then that goes inside the body. Well, there are superior beings than we are. Mikol Eile, there are superior beings in all of these physical entities that we speak about. Bilti Murgashim, and these beings cannot be sensed, umuchashim, and felt, minachushim shelanu, from our own senses. If we take a look around us, we can see people, we can see animals, we can see stones, we can see plants, we can see everything in the physical world that exists in a physical aspect. However, the things that we can't see, unless those people that we're speaking about happen to have psychic abilities, and this is something that's very rare, or alternatively, people who practice very deep meditation and who are able to enter into higher worlds, higher levels of consciousness, such individuals will be able to be privy to see these spiritual beings. But in a normal sense of the word, most people cannot speak and communicate with these spiritual beings. And just as it is that we find with regards to physical things, ha'ele, these physical beings that we speak about, that we see in front of ourselves, they have specific boundaries. A physical entity can only do so much with its physical abilities. For example, a person who lives in a physical body, soul inside the body, if he tries to jump off a building, and the building is 100 floors high, it is highly unlikely that he will be able to survive the event. Likewise, if he tries to fly off the building in the hope of flying and saving his life, chances are he will be totally unsuccessful. This is because the physical comes with certain restrictions. This is how God has created physical beings. There are certain restrictions. V'chukim, and there are certain laws that pertain to a physical entity. So to God, has also placed certain boundaries, certain laws that are applicable to these superior beings to ourselves, according to the wisdom of God that he decreed, that it should be fitting for these creatures, according to their matters, according to whoever they are. So too, just as it is that God created physical beings with limitations and boundaries, we must appreciate that God has created spiritual beings in the world, and these spiritual beings also have certain limitations to them. Indeed, however, according to the boundaries that we know about, by ourselves, that these are natural boundaries, and these things we're able to feel and experience from our senses. We can see, we can hear, we can taste, we can smell, we can touch, we can do all sorts of things with our senses in order to find what the boundaries are for the talents or the abilities that we have. Nikra gufani, and it's called bodily. These are called bodily things. Ma shesholel mikvulim ele nikra ruchni, and that is separated, that is different, that is lacking from all of these physical boundaries. That's what's called spiritual things, spirituality. When we remove all the physical boundaries from who we are as human beings, we get to a world which is called spiritual. The spiritual worlds, the worlds in which these various other creatures inhabit, of spiritual beings that they inhabit over there, these are called spiritual things because they don't have any physicality attached to them. And according to their boundaries and their laws and their structures and all the parts that they have, everything is fitting according to their matters. Just as it is, for example, that we speak about a fish. A fish has scales and fins and gills, and it's able to breathe in a certain way under the water, etc., etc. So too, a human being has the ability to breathe above the water and to attend to matters that exist above the water. And birds have the ability, because they have wings, they're able to fly. Each physical structure has certain talents to it, has certain characteristics to it, has certain qualities to it, and therefore is able to achieve the particular goals that it can within the world that it exists. So to these spiritual beings, completely removed of all physicality of what we're speaking about in this context, are able to achieve the spiritual things that they can do within the world that they are, because they are negated from the physical boundaries that we found ourselves in the physical world as physical beings. Let's continue. You should know, says the Ramchal, that just as it is with regards to physical structures, bodies, there are different types of species, different types of beings. That's what we just discussed now, very briefly. And just as it is that the species changes its particular structure, etc., so too all the structure in accordance with the things that are relative to it are going to be affected in that direction, according to what that particular physical being has, its qualities and characteristics, and the things that it needs to do relative to who it is. So too it will be able to change itself and adapt itself to those particular things. So too in the spiritual worlds, these spiritual beings can be found of all different types. Yes, just as it is that in the waters, although people who don't dive down, they might not realize that there are actually fish there. Well, the fishermen realize it because they're putting their lines through and their baits, and they're going to collect the fish. They realize that there are fish in the sea. But if somebody didn't do that and they just stared at the sea all day long, they might come to think that the sea is all about water and there's nothing inside it. And so too, a person who would be limited in his vision, and he wouldn't ever bother to look up at the sky and realize that there are birds there, and especially at a period of time where there are no birds in the sky at that point in time, were he to look into the sky, he would say to himself, there for sure is no creature in the sky because I don't see a creature in the sky. But of course, people who put their heads up in the air, they realize that there are really birds in the sky. People who dive down into the depths of the sea realize that there are all types of fish, all different types. There are fish There are large, there are small, there are thousands and tens of thousands and perhaps even millions of species of fish. But only the diver and the scuba diver who goes down to the depths of the ocean will begin to see all the different creatures that exist. Today, with thanks to such things as YouTube, Baruch Hashem, people today who are not divers are able to tune into a channel like YouTube, and they're able to see creatures in the waters that they would never have dreamt actually exist. Only somebody with open eyes who has the ability to expand his attention and to realize that there are all sorts of creatures will be able to see, yes, there are all these creatures in the sea. Somebody who is a bird watcher and he looks up into the sky, begins to see that there are thousands upon thousands of species of birds. He realizes that there is more to the sky than just the sky. He realizes that there are creatures that inhabit it. And so too, there are spiritual beings also in the world that we inhabit. The only thing is that we can't see those beings very clearly because we don't attune ourselves to seeing what is out there. We don't put on the scuba garments to be able to see, to go into the water. We don't put the equivalents on in order to fly into the sky, so to speak, the spiritual sky, in order to see all these beings. But those people who do and are willing to put in the effort to learn and understand the concepts of meditation, which we speak about as being the Maaseh Bereshis and the Maaseh Merkavah, etc., the secrets of creation, these are things, as we know the Gemara speaks about, that the four great rabbis went into the Pardes to learn about the secrets of the Torah. These things are available, and all the more so even in today's times. A person who puts in the effort can be deserving to enter into the secrets of Torah, where such things are exposed to him, and he's able to see, so to speak, with his eyes, with his spiritual being, all of these creatures that inhabit the world that we exist in. Those of us who have studied the basics of the swords, of the secrets of Torah, know that clearly that there are different worlds. There is the world of Asiyah, this lower world that we inhabit. There is the world of Yetzirah, slightly higher, where the angels, the messengers of God, inhabit. There are the worlds of Beriah, where there are much greater angels, in fact, and also the souls that they inhabit those worlds. And then there's the world of Atzilut, and then beyond that are worlds, at least one world, Adam Kadmon, and who knows exactly how many worlds there are before that in an infinite manner, worlds upon worlds upon worlds, in which each world carries with it all sorts of spiritual beings, all sorts of creations. God is infinite. He is an infinite creator. He provides for the world of all existence in an infinite manner. And therefore, a person who wishes to can study the Torah from whatever level he wants to. He can read the stories in the Tanakh, and he can see them as physical stories, and he can read deeper and deeper until he realizes that the story, which is physical, contains within it deep spiritual concepts, each person according to his level. And if he wishes to go to the depths of the Torah and to enter into these mystical states, where he is able to witness and see these creatures for himself, the doors are open to him. But he needs to refine himself, and he needs to attune himself, and he needs to do this on a regular basis until eventually such doors will be open to him, and he can enter into these portals of worlds that exist beyond us, even though the worlds are clearly with us as well. So this is the aspect of all these spiritual beings. And as we say over here, Kain Baruch Nim, so too with regards to spiritual beings. Yimtzu Minim Shainim, there are all different types of species. Just like in the waters, you find many types of fish. And in the sky, you find many types of birds. And on the lands, there are different types of people. We're all so different to each other. It's true, we share many characteristics with each other, but our beings are so different. We think so differently, one person from the other. We behave so differently. And very often our bodies too are so different from each other that we're able to achieve things within the limitations that each of us, in fact, have. So the idea is as follows. In the spiritual worlds, we see that there are different beings. Kulam min hasuga ruchani. Everything is from the spiritual aspect. And when all of the species change over, when there are different types of versions of the spirituality according to who they are, so too is the law. So too are the laws that apply, and the structures that apply to each of these beings, each to its own. You see, here we have human beings. We have two eyes in the front of our face, two nostrils and a mouth. and we have two ears, one on the one side, one on the other. And take a bird, for example, or take a fish, and you see that the eyes, for example, appear on one side of the creature and then the other side of the creature, not in the front of the creature. We have hair on our heads, if of course we do, and other creatures don't have hair on their heads, and they have hair on their body, and we might not. And whatever it is, each creature has its own characteristics, has its own limitations. We need to expand our minds. We need to realize that the world is far bigger than we ever imagined it to be. We need to imagine and realize that the infinite creator, the Ein Sof, the infinite creator, is completely infinite. He has achieved a world. He has created a world in which there are millions of creatures, millions of beings, millions of worlds all around us. In fact, each of us, to a degree, is living in their own world, even though we think we're living in the same world. One person is blessed with a huge amount of money, another person is blessed with a very strong body, and as a result of each of these different things that we are blessed with, we are able to achieve things each person to himself, according to what he has. It is as if he lives in his own world. There really is no other being just like he is. And so too over here, we have the same concept in the spiritual worlds. There are spiritual beings upon spiritual beings, one level higher than the other. Amnam klal gadol, but there's a great rule. Who b'chol hasug haruchani, with regards to all of the spiritual worlds, she'ein inyanu v'lo gevulav musag lanu be'emes kemos shehu, that the whole concept of how it exists and its boundaries is not really understood by us in its truth, just as it is. But we know of their existence and a little bit of their matters. According to from their matters, according to what the prophets and the sages have taught us. In other words, the information that we gather and we know about with regards to all of these spiritual beings, on the whole, is simply from the tradition that we have through the sages, through the prophets who have taught us all of these things. Anybody who wants to look up, just go to the book of Ezekiel, open up to chapter number 1, known as the Merkavah. And in this chapter, you'll be able to read stories about a prophet who is experiencing the experience of the Merkavah, of entering into the chariot, whatever we call this chariot. That's a very loose translation, and perhaps it's not even an appropriate translation unless we understand the concept of what a chariot is, and unless we understand the word Merkavah and exactly what this word means to us. But the basic idea is, imagine, for example, a person stepping into a car and being able to transport himself to a new location. That is the idea of a chariot. Imagine, for example, the prophet who steps into the mystical state whereby when he enters this world, he's able to travel to places in the spiritual worlds that he wouldn't be able to do in a physical body. Or one could also say it this way, that the Merkavah is an opposite idea. It is the fact that God himself puts himself into the chariot, lowering himself, so to speak, in order for us to see who he is. Either we're entering the chariot or God is entering the chariot. One way or the other, there is a point at which we travel in a spiritual concept in order to be able to see and vision worlds and existences that we cannot see with our physical eyes. For the majority of people, they will never experience this, simply because they don't know that it exists and they don't have any interest in pursuing and understanding that these spiritual things exist, and they have just simply no interest. They believe that the world is a physical world and there's nothing more than that. The Ramchal is telling us that in the terms of the fundamentals, the foundations of Torah, the very essentials that we need to know, chapter number 2 in this wonderful essay known as the Maamar HaIkarim, this essay of essentials, he brings us into the world immediately of spirituality. He doesn't hold back his punches. He says, here it is. Let us not forget. The Ramchal was a great Kabbalist of outstanding stature. Such an individual was involved in these things. He experimented with it. He experienced it. He had visions of Malachim, of Magidim, that were teaching him Torah. This is what he was known for. And while the rabbis wanted to put him into excommunication, we can say that to a degree he was put into excommunication because of the fact that he involved himself in these great secrets. And of course, as we know the story, the rabbis felt that he was going to be another Shabtai Tzvi, somebody who was going to lead the Jewish people astray. We know that this story never happens. The Ramchal never led anybody astray. Today, we have many, many of his books Dozens of his books are available today in a wonderful set if you want to buy it. And if anybody wants to start with the Derech Hashem, Da'as Tevunos, continue with the Mesilas Yesharim, and look at all these wonderful books that he wrote, all as introductions to help us get into these spiritual worlds, to get into this Merkavah. And let us not forget once again, the Vilna Gaon, one of the greatest of the Kabbalists who lived just over 200 years ago, is in 250 years ago, let's say, 1720 to 1797, the greatest at the time of the Lithuanian rabbis leading the world of the Ashkenazi Jew at that point in time. And he himself acknowledged and said that were the Ramchal to be alive at that point in time, he would have walked on foot from Vilna all the way to Italy in order to study Torah from the Ramchal. This was the Ramchal. In chapter 2, he's bringing us into the world of angels. Here is a person who is sure of himself, who knows what the truth is, and is introducing us to the fact that there is a spiritual world out there. We need to understand it. We need to be in touch with it. For those people who aren't in touch with it, they too can learn about the concepts that exist within these worlds. And this is a section to itself in the study of Kabbalah, known as the Kabbalah Iyunit, the theoretical part of Kabbalah. And everybody is welcome to learn all these things if you can understand the terms. Preferably, you should have a teacher who will guide you along this path and then bring you into other levels. And perhaps at a later stage in time, we can speak about the appropriate direction to take, what is fitting for us, and how we should go about this path to cleave to the Shekhinah, to cleave to the spiritual world, and to be a part of what the entire cosmos is really all about. Let us continue and see what the Ramchal teaches us further about these spiritual beings. V'hinei, you should know something, the Ramchal tells us, that with regards to this concept of these spiritual beings, there are 3 types of categories. Ha'echad, the first, nikra koiches nivdalim, are known as transcendental forces. Let's be clear. Transcendental forces. V'hasheni, the second category, malachim, angels. What we call angels, messengers from God. We do not mean to say beings that have wings and fly about. We mean to say messengers, spiritual beings who go off and do the duties that God commands these spiritual beings to do for us. Vashlishi, and the third category of spiritual entities is Neshamot, are the souls. Everybody here who's watching this should be quite comfortable with category number 3, dealing with souls, because indeed, if you are watching this right now and you are in a body watching with physical eyes, then you are a neshama. You have a soul within you. You are not an angel, however. The angels are the beings that come to perform duties for the higher worlds, for God, the creator, and these beings do whatever it is that they must do. And then, of course, are even higher forces, known as koichos nifdalim, transcendental forces. These surpass the angelic beings. The Ramchal tells us this is a reality. Are there fish in the sea? Yeah. Are there birds in the sky? Yes. Are there spiritual entities in a world that I can't see simply because I don't have the scuba gear? Yes, quite right. When I get the right gear, when I wear the right garments, then perhaps I'll be able to enter that world and see what's there. Until then, I take it at face value that these are the creations which exist in those areas. We're speaking about transcendental forces. These are existences of a spiritual nature which are completely removed from bodies. These particular beings do not have any bodies attached to them. They are very, very pure and very, very high, very advanced, very superior to who we are. And they are the closest to the Shekhinah, to the dwelling presence, the indwelling presence of Hashem. So we have over here, what is the point of these, or what is the idea of these angelic beings? Well, they are the closest in their likeness to the creator of the world. And upon these angelic beings, God, the creator, is constantly dwelling upon them. And they are called by names in accordance with their levels. In other words, each malach, each angel, each transcendental force has its particular name in accordance with the duty that it performs. The name defines the entity. Let us not forget, names define our entities also. If a person is called Abraham, his name itself represents the nature of his soul. We know, for example, Abraham was a man of chesed, was kindness, and therefore a person who is called Abraham, chances are he has within his soul this aspect of kindness. I don't mean to say that the person will never hold back, that he will be stingy. I don't mean to say it in that sense. But the idea is to realize that the Abraham has within him this nature of kindness. The Yitzchak has within him the nature of Gevurah. The Yaakov has within him the nature of emes, of truth, of rachamim, of mercy, etc. And so to each of the Malachim have a name which pertains to their duty that they have to perform in the world. For example, if we speak about the angel Gabriel, Gevurah, strength, tells us that within his nature, he's not a very merciful angel. He deals with things that pertain to holding back, things that deal with strength, destruction, etc., etc. The angel Raphael is an angel associated with the duty of healing, Refuah, Raphael. Each of the names of the Malachim represent the duties that they perform in the world. Galgalei HaKisei, and these are, of course, when we speak about the transcendental forces, you have what's called the Galgalei HaKisei, the wheels of the throne, not to be understood literally like a wheel under a throne that keeps on spinning around, but rather in a spiritual context, that this particular transcendental force is associated with something to do with some sort of spiritual movement, or Ofanim, or the wheels, another type of transcendental force, not really Malach yet. Malachim are even below this, the Yetzirah, and similar to this. Now we get to the next category, HaMalachim. Who are these angels? These are the spiritual beings that were created in order to perform the message, the service of the Creator, may he be blessed. According to whatever he wants to do. Don't think for a second that God needs an angel to attend to do something as if he can't do it himself. He is the infinite being. He is able to achieve anything that he wants to. However, he makes use of these malachim as an interface, so to speak, within the spiritual world to enter into the physical world. So to speak, what we're talking about is that even though God is able to achieve everything by himself, he merely has to open his mouth, so to speak, click his fingers, so to speak, all anthropomorphic terms that we're using to describe what God would do, so to speak, if he was limited in a physical aspect, but he has no physical limitations. We simply use these terms in order to understand the concept of what the infinite God is doing for us relative to what we can understand using our physical bodies. So God is instructing the angel to attend to particular matter or particular matters, and each one of them is appointed in accordance with the matter that is given to him by the supernal will. Whatever God desires that this angel should do, this is what this particular malach will attend to do. So God gives an instruction, so-and-so needs healing. The angel Raphael takes the instruction and brings the healing to this person. Each of the malachim are in control of various things and are able to achieve things in accordance with the instruction that they are given. And they have within them levels that are all different, one lower than the next. And in each one of their levels, there are laws and there are boundaries and limitations. Everything in accordance with what is fitting for them, according to the supernal wisdom. This is the concept of the angel, performing the duty of God in accordance with whatever God wants them to do, as his wisdom stipulates, according to their limited abilities, etc. When you put it all together, the angel goes off and performs this particular deed. The message. He is the messenger. He is the supernal messenger. He's not angel in terms of the concept of what we speak about. Again, with the wings going and we imagine, even if we want to read the Tanakh and we speak about the Malach, and the Malach has so many wings, and the Malach has so many eyes, and all these things, let us not forget these are spiritual concepts that have been put into a physical manifestation. Let me give an example. Imagine, for example, a programmer is designing a program to achieve a particular goal on the computer. Now, the truth of the matter is everybody knows that a computer works with only two numbers, a 0 and a 1. All coding on a computer exists by the concept of off or on. Either the pixel is there or the pixel is not there. Either the command is issued or the command is not issued. It's as simple as that. Either there is a 0 or there is a 1. Computers only speak in a binary language. There are two numbers, 0 and 1. We, on the other hand, speak with the numbers from 0 to 9. We have 10 digits. More than that, we have 26 letters or 22 letters, depending on which alphabet we're speaking about. And through our alphabet, we are able to create words and sentences, paragraphs, and stories, and much more than that. When the programmer comes to put in his program, unless he is an absolute genius and understands the concepts of zeros and ones perfectly, the chances are he will be unable to program his entire program with zeros and ones, because it is very difficult to understand how many zeros and how many ones in particular orders will create the image or the particular program that the programmer wants to do. Therefore, he puts on top of the zeros and ones, let's say, hexadecimal. An hexadecimal consists of 16 digits. We go from 0 to 9 and A to F. And if he puts these numbers together, he says 1A, and then he says 3F, and then he says 4B, etc. This is a code that exists above binary. And it works a little bit, it's easier to understand. Instead of using zeros and ones, I've got a lot more digits to work with, to play with, in order to create a program. But then comes a great programmer, and he designs a program on top of hexadecimal. And he says in this programming language, let's call it basic, just for easy purposes, he says that the word print, P-R-I-N-T, says to the computer 0000 1111 0011 0111 1000. And the command print accesses the code which says all the zeros and the ones, and as a result, the computer prints out a word on the screen. For our purposes, all that we can deal with are the words. We understand words, and that is how we are able to achieve the programming language. But the computer doesn't understand prints. It has to change the concept of the word print into its zeros and ones, and then it prints out and puts into action the command of print. This is the same thing with the Malachim. In our terms, because we are physical beings, we tend to think of the angels in a physical way. We have wings, the angels have wings and eyes and whatever it is that we talk about. And it has 6 wings and 4 wings, and it's able to fly in so many flights from one part to the other, etc. This is only because we live in a physical world. We need to imagine things in a physical aspect. But the reality is to keep into account that just as the computer works with zeros and ones, which is completely removed, mufshat, it is completely separated from the concept of the word print, so too in our physical world, we are completely separated from the concept of what a malach really is. And to imagine that the malach is the print command is a mistake. The malach is the zeros and the ones, so to speak. When we can enter into the very essence of the computer, we will not see prints. We will see zeros and ones. When we can enter into the very spiritual worlds that we're speaking about, we can speak about and see the malach for who it is in a spiritual concept. But because we don't have spiritual eyes at this point in time, we are limited with our physical eyes. We define the angel in accordance with a physical idea so that we can relate to it. A messenger goes off and attends to a particular task. How does he do it? He walks, he runs, he flies. How does he fly? Wings. Is that how he gets from step 1 to step 2? From place 1 to place 2? Must be that the angels have wings. No, that is only the physical concept of what we understand because we ourselves have physical eyes. The reality is the spiritual is only a concept of spiritual entity, ethereal, completely removed from what we know about. And above the angels are the transcendental forces that even go higher, more superior than this concept. If we think that we're imagining an angel and even then we're getting it wrong, then let alone that we can understand what the transcendental force is. Now we continue. So we've spoken about now the Malachim, the angels. Now we speak about, guess who? Ourselves, Neshamot, the souls, third level of spirituality. These are spiritual entities that in the future are going to come into bodies, and they're going to join the physical body, and then they're going to be joined to it completely like a knot, kashur, completely connected, kesher gadol, with a very great connection. V'lahem, and to them, Chukim pratiyim, there are particular laws, kafi inyanam, in accordance with their matters, or kafi amatzavim shelahim, and in accordance with their particular situations. Pirush, what does this mean? Ki hine, behold, matzavim shonim nimtzeim neshamot. There are all different types of situations that come about to the souls. Okay, so we're talking about a soul, it inhabits a body, and everything is in accordance with the different situation it's going to have to go through. Shehare, behold, yesh lahem metzios chutz leguf. These souls have an existence, and neshama has an existence which is outside of the body. Or metzios betoch haguf, and then it has an essence to it, an existence which is inside the body. Now, this existence that it has outside of the body, consists of two different types. One of them, one is the existence that it has before it comes into the body, and the second one, is going to be when it exits the body and it's outside of the body, after it has already been inside the body. So a neshama is completely different from a malach and the transcendental forces. Why? Because the neshama has two existences to it. One is the nature of the soul before it enters into the body. Number two, after it has entered the body and it's performed a particular task in this world, it will be freed from the body and it will then fly up, so to speak, into that spiritual world, and it will then be released as a neshama after it has already lived within a physical body. And in accordance with all of these situations, and so we say, according to all of these situations, so too will be the boundaries that are made and are liable to happen to different types of events. And everything is going to change in accordance with what is fitting for the situation that it finds itself in. Hamalachim, regarding the angels. Angels are completely the servants of Hashem who fulfill his will, who fulfill his words. And all of the things of the world are done by these angels, whether for good or for bad. And on this side, they are divided into two different classes. There are angels who are involved in good and angels involved in bad. There is the cut, the section of angels, that group of angels who are involved in good, and there is the group of angels who are involved in bad. The neshamas we spoke about already. They come from a world before no body, and then afterwards into the body, they leave the body. Angels performing the tasks of Hashem, but they do so in different ways. There are angels on the side of good, and there are angels on the side of bad. There are these supernal messengers that, in order to give free choice to man, operate in a capacity of good, and there are the angels, in order to give free choice to man, who act in a capacity of evil. Pirush, which means there are those who are appointed for good things, whether the good things relate to the body or whether the good things relate to the soul. And then, of course, there are the appointed angels in a capacity of bad for physical matters and bad for the souls, for the spiritual matters. And these appointed angels who are for bad are called angels of destruction, and they are called demons, basically. These are the angels of evil. Their duty in the world is to destroy. Their duty in the world is to frighten us and to do actions that cause damage in the world. These things are happening around us all the time. There are malachim of good, malachim of bad. Messengers performing good things for us all the time, messengers performing bad. Let's be clear. We don't always know what is good and what is bad. One moment winning a lottery could be an outstandingly good thing, and when we find out 2 years later the destruction that the win caused for us, we lost our family, and something happened to the person, he went to prison because he misused the funds or whatever, we suddenly realized that the big win was a bad thing. So in the meantime, when something looks like it's good to us, it might not necessarily be good. When something looks like it's bad to us, it might not necessarily be bad at all. In fact, it might be a good which is hidden in bad, as the good might be really bad, which is hidden inside the good. So each thing to its own. In other words, if I've described it correctly, so when something good happens, it might just really be that there's a bad undertone that will happen later. And sometimes when something is bad to our eyes, it might actually be that we will see the good undertone that is going to happen at a later point in time. All of this is being worked out according to these angels, angels of good, angels of bad. When we see things occurring around us and ultimately we see the revealed blessing, we see it's coming from the good. When we see the revealed evil coming, we know it came from the angel of evil, of bad. There is another type of creation, a type of being, which is to be found. And this is a being that exists as a middle point between the physical and the spiritual. So we've got the physical, here we are in our physical bodies, and we've got the spiritual, that's the soul sitting inside. And when we work in life, there's always spiritual happening and physical happening. But there is something that goes between them that causes an interface, usually all the time. What is this interface? And then there is this, what we say, that it has a little bit of the boundary in the physical sense, and all of its matters are then negated. And then there is a negation. It has a little bit of the boundaries within the physical, and its matters are also a little bit removed from the physical. There's a little bit of physical and there's a little bit not physical. What exactly are we talking about? Something in the physical world which has properties of physicality, but it also lacks some physicality. What are we talking about? V'shem hamin hazeh nikraim shadim. And the name of this particular entity that goes between the physical and the spiritual, between who we are in the physical to the spiritual, in other words, not ourselves, but in the physical world, this is called the Shadim. The Shadim, of course, are the demons. Now, these are not just the Mazikim that we learned about above in the previous paragraph. The Mazikim are damaging angels. These Shadim consist of a little bit of physicality, and then there's something that there's lacking in their physicality, which brings them over a little bit onto the side of spirituality. The Torah tells us that at the time of the creation of the world, that at the time of sunset, meaning the twilight zone, twilight time, at twilight time, within the creation, before Shabbos came in, there was a moment in which beings were created, but were not allowed to be created fully as physical beings. And as a result, because they were not created completely physical, they had within them a certain aspect of spirituality existing within both aspects, physicality and spirituality, all at the same time. And they have a little bit of a physical body, but not like our bodies. So there are demons, according to the Ramchal, Shadim, that exist within the world. They have physical bodies. We don't even realize that these are Shadim in front of us, and yet they are a little bit removed away from the physicality. It's not exactly like a body that we have, but indeed it lives a physical life within its own lifestyle. We don't even understand what this is, unless, of course, we understand who these Shadim are, unless we've been introduced to them and we understand them on a personal level. Perhaps we've invited them over for a lunch or something like that. But these are beings that exist with families which have a certain physicality to them, but at the same time, they are not completely physical like we are. They have within them some sort of aspect of spirituality also. But not like real spirituality. Not like we know spirituality, like a neshama. The Gambahim, also with these Shadim, Yesh madregos uminim shonim. There are all sorts of levels upon levels and different types of species. Okofi madregos sehem, and according to their levels, kachem achukim vagvulim shelahem. So too are all of their laws and their boundaries and their limitations that they have. So different types of categories here. We've gone through a whole wealth of spiritual beings so far. We've spoken about transcendental forces. We've spoken about angels. We've spoken about souls. We spoke about damaging angels' forces. And now we've spoken about these concepts of the Shadim, of these evil demons that are kind of half physical and half spiritual and inhabit this world together with us. Ein lecha davar ba'olam hatachton. The Ramchal tells us that there is no matter in this lower world, bein etzim, bein mikra, whether in its essence, whether in its incident, in its own matter, shelo yimtza kenegdo, that there won't be found opposite it, inyan male male bekoichos hanivdalim, that there won't be opposite it a matter which is higher within the transcendental forces. In other words, everything that's happening here below is happening also in the worlds above, in the transcendental forces. And so too there is no matter below, alav memunim mikas hamalachim sheminhagim shemanhigim oiso umechadashim bo inyanim umikraim כפי מה שיגזור האדון ברוך הוא ומה שפועלים העליונים בגשמיים נקראהו השפעה. And so we see over here this last point. So there are no matters below over here that also don't have aspects of the angels above who are leading this particular situation as it should be. Nothing occurs within this physical world except through the power of these Malachim also, who are renewing certain matters and events according to what God, the Master, is decreeing all the time. And this that the superior beings, these spiritual beings, are affecting in the physical world, nikra'ehu hashpa'ah, they are known, they are called hashpa'ah, they are called influence. So let's give an example on this for a second. When we speak about a person who's very poor, and then all of a sudden he won the lotto, he won the lottery. How did that happen? There must have been hashpa'ah. There must have been a flow of divine energy, of influence that came from above to below in order to cause the events to happen so that the person would win the lottery. A person is ill, God forbid, and then they become well. How did it happen that they became well? This is because there was a hashpa'ah. There was an influence from above. The Malachim from above were commanded by Hashem to give over a certain force, and as a result of this force coming through, the person becomes healed. How else do we explain it? Let us not dare to explain that healing comes about because the doctor healed, God forbid. The doctor is an intermediary. He helps with certain medication, with diagnosing certain things, with being aware of how to do certain procedures. Fantastic. He does an excellent job. But ultimately, the role of healing is going to come about through a hashpa'ah from above that will cause the ultimate healing inside the body. If, of course, the doctor is in charge of everything, then we must assume that the doctor will prevent a person even from dying because he can do anything. And of course, this is not true. The doctor can only do what he can do on a physical level, and he can do amazing things. He can give medication, and that can cause a healing into the body. He can provide all sorts of herbs. He knows what the right herb is. He can perform a surgery and heal a person. All of these things he does. Fantastic. But ultimately, the healing process and everything that's going to happen is out of the hands of the doctor. We rely upon God. Only God can help throughout the healing. The person goes through surgery, and the doctor does a terrific job. But now it is God that brings in the hashpa'ah, the influence that causes the body to heal itself at this point in time and bring the person to a state of normalcy once again. He has been healed and he's able to operate in a normal sense as he was before the operation. This comes about through the hashpa'ot, through the influences, channels of divine energy, of light, of radiance that come through in a spiritual manner through these malachim in order to affect the nature of the person in the physical world. Every time that we experience this, we must realize and know that there is a hashpa'ah, there is an influence coming from Hashem, a command to the angels, the transcendental forces, and the angels who ultimately perform the duty of God to bring this person the nourishment, the spiritual energy and light and life force that the person needs to heal or to accomplish whatever it is that he needs to do. Kol hashpa'ot haba'os min ha'elyonim, all of these influences that come about from these supernal areas, supernal beings, letzorech hatachtonim, for the sake of the lower beings, oivrim derech hakochavim. We should know that all of this passes through the way of the stars. V'nimtzu hakochavim hamashpi'im hayoter krovim letachtonim, and we find that consequently these stars are really influences which are the closest to the lower sources. So these people that speak about astrology and so on, and we know that being influenced by the stars, these people are not entirely wrong. This is correct. The influence is coming from the star. The star is a physical being which contains within it a spiritual entity. And what is happening is the malach is being issued with the command, giving off this energy, this hashpa'ah, into this closest area of physical, spiritual into this world, comes through the star, and ultimately the energy is processed and comes down to us. And therefore, and however, Hashpa'atam eino ela, however, indeed, this influence that comes, eino ela kafi mashin nimshach bahem milamala, all of the influence that comes from the star to the person is ultimately coming to them from a force from above. Nothing happens without the force from above. The stars are not independent entities of an idolatrous nature that people have to serve the star because the star provides us whatever it is that we are going through. And because we are born at a certain time, we therefore respect this particular star because this star is in charge of us. The star is not in charge of us. There is an influence from above that is in charge of us. And the influence carries through to the malach, carrying through to the stars, carrying through ultimately to ourselves. To all of these things, all of these spiritual beings, Nasana Adon Baruch Hu Rishus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave permission, Lif'ol b'tachtonim, to cause something in the lower worlds, Pe'ulots, all sorts of things, all sorts of happenings, Shelo kederech hativi, and it's not done. This is the idea: is that Hashem has given, the Master has given permission that all of the lower beings are able to do things themselves in a way that is not natural. When the lower beings are going to awaken these things, which means to say we're speaking about a concept where we as physical beings are able to affect the spiritual by means of a communication that through our power we can elicit some sort of force above and cause something to happen into the physical world itself. We have the ability to do it. We have the ability to awaken one of these malachim to do a particular thing in this world. So he says kederech hativi, so shelo kederech hativi, in an unnatural manner, which means a type of a, if I can call it that, magic, but this is a dangerous word to use, and I don't want to use it at all. It is not a fair word to use, but nevertheless, the concept is we are involving us in ourselves in some sort of activity that catches on, that causes a connection to this malach, and ultimately causes a flow to come down to ourselves. When these lower beings awaken them, through means of known matters, known things, which have been prepared and which are united for this particular purpose. However, indeed, there is no strength in any one of these beings, these spiritual beings, these spiritual forces, to do whatever it wants to do. In other words, it's a certain degree where we say stop. And it doesn't matter what we do, but as much as we try to do, we cannot force the entity to achieve more, and the entity itself is also unable to do more than it is able to do. But rather each one of these entities has a boundary and limitation according to the boundary and limitation that it was given at the time of its creation. That according to that limitation, and according to those ways, bilvad, alone, that it's given to it, it will be able to do those particular deeds, that is given to it in order that it will be able to do these particular things. And there are things in these matters that we're speaking about that are permitted for us, where we are entitled to interact with these malachim and transcendental forces to achieve certain things. There is a certain degree of permissibility. And then there are things that are forbidden for us, lanu. Sefer Yetzirah, and this is the matter of the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, and the actions of what's called sorcery or magic. In other words, what we're talking about here is that human beings have the ability to affect these higher beings, which in turn bring down a shefa, a hashpa'ah, that bring down influence to ourselves. And those who study these particular areas of Kabbalah, of the real mystical part of Torah, are privy to know how these things work. And let us be clear, because a person knows how it works does not mean he is entitled to use it. And there are many, many conditions attached to this as to what he would be allowed to do and what he wouldn't. And therefore, anybody who just jumps into this and feels he already knows what the book is to get and he knows how to use it, he is mistaken. He will only cause harm to himself because he doesn't realize what he's doing at this point in time. Therefore, he needs a teacher. He needs to be guided into the process. And he needs somebody reliable, a God-fearing person who can be trusted in these matters. These type of teachings that we learn about, according to the Ramchal, can be found in the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. This book is available in many editions. It has so many commentaries, we cannot even count all the commentaries available. One of the best known commentaries is the Vilna Gaon, which is absolutely fantastic, but there are many other commentaries one can learn with it. And for those who wish to, there is a translation available by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, a fantastic translation, which gives a great insight into how the Sefer Yetzirah works. But of course, practically speaking, to be able to use the Sefer Yetzirah is another story altogether. And as we say over here, the Maaseh Keshafim, all of these magical things, sorcery, etc., which can be found in many other books. But we're not discussing all the books that one can find in today. And our purpose is not to engage in all of this activity. Our purpose is to realize that the infinite creator has created a wondrous world, a splendid world, where we can find physical entities of all kinds. We can find fish in the sea, birds in the sky, humans and animals on the land. And each of these worlds, each of these entities exists in their own structures, in their own foundations, in their own limitations, living the lives that they do. Each species living a life by itself as if it were in another world. And beyond this, God has created spiritual entities. He has created the stars as an intermediary, so to speak, to work between the spiritual and the physical, as the Ramchal is teaching us here. And he has created higher beings that interact with us, either that we know that they're interacting with us or we don't know. Those people who engage and wish to go further in depth and they study Torah, one studies all of Torah, one studies the Tanakh, one studies the Talmud, one studies the Mishnayot, one studies the Halacha, one studies the Midrashim, one studies and studies and studies. And as one progresses in one's growth, one begins to learn all of these other areas as well, until one becomes very close to Hashem and one realizes that the world is far bigger than we imagine it to be. It is created by an infinite being. There is nothing that's impossible for the infinite being to do. The one God, who is the one God over the entire world. And this is what we need to focus on. Forget about the idolatry, forget about all the magic of imagining that we are performing all sorts of wonders, but rather to connect with the one God, the infinite creator. And through that, we will be privy and we'll be blessed to be able to connect with this God and understand the world in so many new areas that we never even imagined were possible before. And these, of course, are included within the Maaseh Merkavah and the Maaseh Bereshis. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this Shear and got something out of it. I'm Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet, my site, www.lovingkindness.co. If you've enjoyed this Shear, please do like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and of course share this video with family and friends so that they too can gain from these shiurim. Please feel free to listen to the first shiur before this as an introduction, of course, as we're going through the different levels, the different chapters of the Maamar HaIkarim. And so feel free to watch any of the other videos that I have on a variety of subjects. If you are able to and wish to take part in joining me in partnering in the activities I'm involved in the Torah that I teach, please do consider becoming a supporter either via my website, by becoming a member of my webpage, or alternatively by visiting my Patreon page and offering a small donation or whatever you're able to afford, and each month to give something in order to help me to be able to do these videos as you see over here in front of you, and then I should be able to do more in the future. Now, thanks very much for joining me today, and I look forward to another shiur in the near future, and I wish you everything of the best. Take care. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.